war, not of nations only, but of energy. A silent battlefield stretching across oil fields and solar horizons. Your world is powered by choices you never made, choices you never saw. By the time you notice, the war is already here. You might ask yourself, who is winning this new energy war? How fragile is the world built on oil? And can renewables rise fast enough to reshape the future? Stay with us, because in this video, we unravel the forces driving the global power shift. From collapsing grids to rising clean technologies to the nations racing to control the energy of tomorrow. This is the story behind the choices powering your world. They call it transition, a move from black crude to clean light. But beneath the promise, numbers clash in silence. Demand rising, resources tightening. Every barrel, every volt is a vote in this unspoken election. From Beijing to Berlin, boardrooms draw battle lines. Algorithms against oil rigs, credit against carbon. This is not a shift, it is a struggle. A quiet power war deciding who keeps the lights on when darkness returns. But what we call the energy story is only the surface. Beneath it lies a quieter truth. A truth built over decades, through infrastructure so vast and so fragile that most people never notice it until it fails. Every light that turns on, every engine that starts, every data center that hums through the night, depends on a chain of decisions made long before today. And those decisions were never simple. They were bargains, calculations, risks hidden inside convenience. Look closely. The global grid is stretching, aging, carried by cables laid in another era, while demand rises faster than nations can adapt. And as the world accelerates toward renewables, the transition is not a clean break, but a collision. Old systems refusing to die. New systems not yet ready to lead. Behind every promise of the future of energy, there is a struggle to secure what remains of the past. Oil fields mapped like treasure, rare earth mines guarded like national secrets, and supply chains treated as weapons in a quiet, global contest. This is the true context of 2025, a world balanced on a knife edge between reliability and reinvention. A world forced to choose not just how it will be powered, but who will hold the power. Power is never random. It has architecture, structure, ownership. For decades, energy shaped the world quietly, behind closed doors, in boardrooms where supply, currency, and influence were negotiated long before the public ever heard a word. Oil didn't just fuel transportation, it fueled empires. It funded governments. It decided wars without firing a single shot. But today, the structure is shifting. New players have entered the arena. Tech corporations, data monopolies, and nations racing to dominate the energy of tomorrow. Look at the alliances forming in silence. Look at the investments moving without headlines. Look at who is buying the grids, the ports, the pipelines. Because energy is not just a commodity. It is ownership, it is leverage. It is the invisible hand that can lift nations or bring them to their knees. And in 2025, the question is no longer who produces energy, but who controls the system that controls you. From here, the battlefield changes. Oil is no longer fighting alone. It now faces an opponent built from algorithms, storage chemistry, and machines that learn faster than any human boardroom ever could. This is the clash of technologies, the moment where power stops being extracted and starts being engineered. Because in 2025, energy is no longer just fuel. Energy is computing. Machines are beginning to choose the flow of power themselves. They redirect electricity before grids collapse, shift resources before shortages appear, and correct failures long before anyone notices. In this new arena, strength is no longer measured in barrels or pipelines, but in processing speed and the intelligence behind it. Because the next energy superpower won't be the one with the largest reserves, but the one whose systems can outthink the world. Machines don't just manage energy anymore. They negotiate it. They balance cities, stabilize markets, and keep entire nations running while no one is watching. And when every watt becomes a data point and every decision becomes a calculation, the battlefield shifts again, from hardware and grids to the intelligence designing them. But power doesn't disappear, it migrates from the hands that built the machines to the systems that now think for them. And when those systems start making choices faster than any regulator, any minister, any nation, the real struggle is no longer about who owns the energy. It's about who owns the mind that controls it. But the real fracture is happening underneath all of it. Because once machines begin predicting demand before humans even feel it, they stop waiting for permission. They reroute power across entire regions, shift load between cities, and regulate stability with a precision no operator can match. And in that silence, in that invisible choreography, a new kind of authority is born. Not the authority of ministers or markets or multinationals, but the authority of systems that observe everything, faster, colder, and with no sense of consequence. So the question is no longer who produces the energy, but who shapes the intelligence that allocates it. But the deeper shift is what this intelligence begins to rewrite. Because when an energy system knows where a crisis will appear hours before the crisis forms, it starts to decide who gets stability and who gets the blackout. It chooses which industries stay alive through the night, which data centers remain cooled, which hospitals stay powered, and which cities wait for a morning that may not come. And slowly, quietly, the hierarchy flips. Governments respond to fluctuations they didn't trigger, markets bend to forecasts they didn't predict, and nations negotiate with systems they no longer command. In this new landscape, influence stops looking like diplomacy. It becomes something quieter, a negotiation between algorithms that never speak our language. Some nations begin rising not because they have more oil or larger grids, but because their systems learn faster than their rivals. Elsewhere, entire economies start drifting off balance, not from shortage, but from misalignment between human intention and machine prediction. And while leaders debate policies that were already outdated yesterday, the real momentum shifts inside server halls no one has ever visited. Because the curve that decides the future is no longer drawn in parliaments or boardrooms, it's calculated in microseconds. Across the globe, a quiet recalibration begins. Regions once defined by fuel and geography start reorganizing around data, specifically the data that predicts energy flow. Some alliances strengthen not through treaties, but through synchronized machine learning models. Meanwhile, others drift apart because their systems interpret the same signal in completely different ways. In the middle of this shift, a new form of dependency emerges, one no leader can admit publicly. They rely on intelligence they cannot control to stabilize resources they claim to command. And somewhere between confidence and denial, the future is redrawn, not with borders, but with data streams flowing beneath them. What becomes impossible to ignore is the new kind of competition taking shape. Not a race for resources, but a race for prediction. Some grids begin forecasting demand 30 seconds before it happens, adjusting power routes without any human approval. Elsewhere, oil markets react to signals so subtle that even analysts miss them, but the algorithms never do. And in this widening gap between human awareness and machine foresight, a quiet truth emerges. Whoever sees the future first controls it. But here's the cost. These systems learn faster than the societies relying on them. So while nations accelerate, their people struggle to understand the forces guiding their daily lives. In that disconnect, tension begins to rise. Not loud, but unmistakable. And as this silent acceleration continues, the gap becomes impossible to hide. A world advancing faster than the people living inside it. A tension not seen, but felt. China saw the shift long before anyone else. While other nations argued over oil routes and fading supply lines, Beijing built something different, a grid that learns. Across vast provinces, sensors capture every watt of movement, the rise of factories at dawn, the slowdown of cities at night, and the invisible pulse of 30 million homes. Then the system begins predicting, not hours ahead, but minutes, sometimes seconds. Solar surpluses in the west reroute instantly to the coast. Wind fields in Inner Mongolia stabilize industrial zones 1,000 kilometers away. No meetings, no approvals, just action. And in this quiet efficiency, China discovers a new form of power, not the fuel it extracts, but the future it can forecast. America's power story is nothing like China's. Here, the grid isn't one system, it's thousands of pieces built in different decades, owned by different companies, and driven by different interests. When shale oil surged, the country expanded fast, stretching pipelines across prairies and wiring entire regions in haste. But the rise of solar and wind didn't arrive in the same order. Energy now comes from the wrong places at the wrong times. Sun in the deserts, wind in the plains, demand in the cities. So the United States turns to something else: markets, auctions that shift power by the minute, algorithms that price electricity faster than people can argue. Yet every surge, every blackout, every spike in demand echoes through a system held together by competition instead of coordination. And in that tension, America learns a different lesson. Power isn't about prediction. It's about survival in a grid that never agreed with itself. And beneath all the numbers, the real struggle in the United States isn't technology at all. It's agreement. 50 states, hundreds of companies, millions of decisions colliding every day, trying to move power across a system that never speaks with one voice. China builds clarity. America survives complexity. Europe promises a future powered by wind and sunlight, but its reality is far more fragile. Across the continent, old nuclear plants retire, gas networks tighten, and every winter storm becomes a test of how green stability truly is. Germany shuts down reactors, only to buy electricity from neighbors burning the coal it tried to avoid. France leans on nuclear strength, yet struggles with aging reactors and a grid stretched thin by electric demand. And in the East, nations caught between Russian gas and EU regulations fight to keep their lights on as geopolitics squeezes every pipeline. So Europe discovers its paradox. It leads the world in green ambition, but still lives one cold night away from remembering how vulnerable a clean future can be. For decades, Saudi Arabia shaped the world with oil, a single resource, a single lever of influence. But today, the kingdom faces a crossroads, a future where barrels no longer guarantee power and sunlight becomes as valuable as crude. In the deserts of Neom, mirrors track the rising sun, feeding solar fields the size of cities, while engineers design hydrogen plants built to export energy that burns clean. Yet the transformation is not simple. Oil still funds the state, stabilizes the region, and anchors a global market that cannot turn away overnight. So Saudi Arabia plays a dual game, leading the green transition with mega projects, while protecting the old system that the world still depends on. And in that balance, the kingdom discovers a new definition of power, not abandoning the past, but rewriting it in the heart of the desert. Saudi Arabia pours billions into renewables, vast solar fields rising across its deserts, turning sunlight into the kingdom's next great export. In East Africa, a different kind of energy story is unfolding. Not about dominance, but about emergence. Kenya stands at the front of this new frontier, a nation where geothermal steam rises from the Rift Valley and wind farms sweep across vast highlands once untouched by modern grids. Here, power is not inherited from old empires. It is built slowly, deliberately, from volcanic heat, from mountain winds, from sunlight that falls almost all year long. But ambition brings pressure. Expanding the grid strains a young economy, and every new project must balance global investors, local communities, and the promise of an Africa rising. Yet Kenya keeps moving, because for the first time, the continent sees energy not as a burden, but as a path to stand beside the giants of the world, on its own terms and with its own power. Over the next decade, the financial world will face a seismic shift as money slowly retreats from fossil giants and billions flow into the rising engines of clean power. Three futures now compete for the markets. In the first, renewables accelerate faster than expected. Solar, wind, and storage firms surge across global exchanges, while oil majors reinvent themselves to survive a world where barrels lose their crown. In the second, volatility becomes the new normal. Every drought, every heat wave, every political shock pushes energy stocks into wild swings, rewarding traders who move faster than policy can react. And in the third, a hybrid world takes shape. Oil keeps its grip a little longer, but clean technologies claim the growth curve, turning the market into a battlefield where old power and new power fight for every dollar. Whichever path emerges, one truth defines the decade. The energy market is no longer about fuel, it's about momentum and who can capture it first. Across the world, pressure is rising. Streets fill with protests against a warming planet as droughts carve new scars into the land and once reliable seasons slip out of balance. These warnings are no longer distant. Reservoirs shrink, harvests fail, and entire regions fight for water the way past generations fought for oil. But even as nations rush toward cleaner energy, another challenge emerges, one far quieter, yet far more dangerous. The grid itself is breaking. Old transmission lines strain under new demand, renewables surge and collapse with every cloud and windless hour, and cities discover that clean power alone is not enough to keep a modern world alive. Because the real battle ahead is not just generating energy, it's delivering it. Anywhere, every hour without failure. A new chapter is opening, one where clean energy is not just a technology, but a promise of skies that stay blue, cities that breathe easier, and power that lifts people up without dragging the planet down. Across the world, solar villages rise, wind corridors spread across coastlines, and communities discover that green power is more than electricity. It is independence, resilience, and hope. But the real transformation begins with knowledge. Every classroom, every young engineer, every student who learns how energy shapes the world becomes a spark that lights the path to a cleaner age. Because in the end, the greatest power we hold is not in our grids or turbines. It is in our ability to protect the only world we have and to choose a future where the planet itself gets a second chance. The future of energy is not only cleaner, it is more human. A world where the workers who fuel our progress are no longer invisible, but recognized as the backbone of a changing planet. From solar fields in the desert to offshore wind platforms rising above the waves, millions of people are stepping into new roles. Safer jobs, fairer wages, and opportunities built for the next generation. Because the clean transition is more than technology. It is a chance to rebuild an industry that protects both the earth and the people who power it. Training programs expand across nations, giving workers the skills to climb smarter towers, maintain smarter grids, and shape smarter cities. And as this new workforce rises, so does hope that the energy of tomorrow can lift communities, strengthen families, and create a future where progress and dignity finally move forward together. Thank you for watching this journey through the energy war, the challenges ahead, and the hope rising across our changing planet. If this video gave you something new to think about, show your support, hit the like button, subscribe for more deep dive stories like this, and share your thoughts in the comments below. We truly appreciate every voice, every question, and every perspective. Your time, your attention, and your curiosity mean more than you know. Thank you for being here. And until the next chapter, stay informed, stay curious, and take care of our one and only planet.